ending our participation in the federal government's refugee resettlement program, and investing our resources in serving migrants in other ways. And all of this is because they're white. That's it, they're white.
Are we just gonna let everybody go, and can the president just give other people blanket, you're refugees? So what's the difference, Mr. President, between a...
They just did that for 4 years, Al.
Trump administration, they're saying that essentially these white South Africans assimilate better, and they're also not at as much of a security risk.
Did he say that? Did you hear him say that at all? Liberals melting down over white African refugees. They don't want those types of refugees because they're not the right kind of color or ethnicity or religion or something. But boy, oh boy, are they mad. We got a bunch of clips here queued up on this story, but we also have this letter from the Episcopal Church, which is saying we're not going to help resettle any white people from South Africa. Now, they got millions to resettle other refugees of other varieties, but when you put in some white folks in there, suddenly they just throw a fit. They don't want anything to do with it. They wrote this whole letter here explaining how their religion, I guess, I'm not Episcopalian, but apparently this is egregious. So we'll understand what they're trying to say here. But here is the background story from Religion News, put together a very nice article referencing where this emanated from. Obviously, President Trump kicked the whole thing off because he said, we're going to accept refugees from South Africa who are being murdered and executed. And now that it's happening, they're flipping out all over the place on the media. They just had a massive struggle session over there on CNN. They're hyperventilating over this madness. Now, let's go through the story. They say, all right, in a striking move, we got 40 years of a relationship eliminated from the Episcopalians. The denomination said today that it is terminating its partnership with the federal government to resettle refugees in America. Oh no, you're gonna not do that anymore? Oh, we're so sad. You can keep your refugees out of our country. How about that? Citing moral opposition to resettling white Afrikaners from South Africa who've been classified as refugees by President Trump, said that 2 weeks ago, the government told us that we are expected to resettle white people, and they can't abide by that. They said this is a moral line. We can't cross this moral line of resettling white people who are being executed and murdered in South Africa. I can't avoid it. So they wrote this whole letter, and they're absolutely flipped about this. So you'll see Trump commented on this, but Al Sharpton's flip. We welcomed a bunch of new people here, but MSNBC had some other clips. Wait till we get into it. But here's what the letter said from the church. A letter from the presiding bishop called Sean Rowe says, we're not taking any white people into America, and our relationship with the federal government is canceled. They wrote, dear people of God in the Episcopal Church, I am writing today about some significant news with the Episcopal Migration Ministries, where they invade our country for us. The organization that leads to the Episcopal Church's refugee resettlement ministry. So they've got a whole, ministry to invade our country. Writing, since January, the previously bipartisan U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, right, which was a big NGO Democratic grift operation, in which we participate, so beautiful to read this, has essentially shut down. It's gone. We know. We were celebrating USAID cutting of the funds a long time ago. Now, virtually, look at it's like music to your ears. No new refugees have arrived. Hundreds of staff in resettlement agencies around the country have been laid off, and funding for resettling refugees who have already arrived has been uncertain. Then, just over 2 weeks ago, the federal government informed Episcopalian Migration Ministries that under the terms of our federal grant, we are expected to resettle white Afrikaners from the South African continent whom the U.S. government has classified as refugees and country. White people. We're expected to do this. I can't believe this. So in light of the church's steadfast commitment to racial justice, whatever that means, I guess not justice for white people, and reconciliation in our historic ties with the Anglican Church of South Africa, we are not able to take this step because helping resettle white South African refugees is outside of alignment with racial justice, whatever that means. Accordingly, the Episcopalians have determined that by the end of the federal fiscal year, we will conclude our refugee resettlement grant agreements with the U.S. federal government. Outstanding, incredible, great, don't want your help. I want to be very clear about why we made this decision, said this white hater person, and what we believe lies ahead for the Episcopalian Migration Ministry's vital work. He writes, it has been painful to watch one group of refugees selected in a highly unusual manner, I guess genocide is unusual for them, receive preferential treatment over many others who've been waiting in refugee camps or dangerous conditions for years. Well, that's kind of how it works, right? You prioritize different things based on the threat level, right? That's what you guys kept telling us. Why we had to accept millions and millions of illegal non-citizens into our country because of your claims of high priority action. You have to. Well, someone else got elected and the priorities have shifted. And now it is more in alignment alignment with American interests, as we're going to find out. He says, I am saddened and ashamed that many of the refugees who are being denied entrance to the United States are brave people who worked alongside our military in Iraq and Afghanistan and now face danger at home because of their service to our country. Was he screeching about this when Joe Biden left out like 1,000 people back there in Afghanistan and people were falling out of wheel wells? No. Did they break their relationship with the Biden administration when the entire Middle East came crumbling into multiple pieces? No, they didn't. Because the grift kept going. It's about money. They get their money cut off, so they throw a little temper tantrum, and then they drape it in this moralistic language filled with platitudes and all the things. I also grieve that victims of religious persecution, including Christians, have not been granted refugee status in recent months. Yeah, well, we're working on that too. Now, as Christians, we must be guided not by political vagaries, okay, but by unsure and certain knowledge, which his prior paragraph was full of those. Don't be guided by political vagaries. This entire paragraph is filled with political vagaries. I'm saddened and ashamed by refugees who've been denied entrance. Which ones? Brave people who worked alongside our military. Okay, great. So take your platitudes, Reverend, and shove it. But by the sure and certain knowledge that the kingdom of God is revealed to us and the struggles of those on the margins, Jesus tells us, America, that you must care for the poor and vulnerable as we would care for Jesus. And we must follow that command and accept everybody from all over the world, no matter what. Right now, what that means is ending our participation in the federal government's refugee resettlement program and investing our resources in serving migrants in other ways. And all of this is because they're white. That's it. They're white. Help the white Afrikaners. What's your problem? For nearly 40 years, Episcopal Migration Ministries, 40 years they've helped invade our country, has put hands and feet to our church's commitment to seek and serve Christ in migrants and refugees into America. Why can't they just serve them there in their homeland? They don't have to migrate or be a refugee anywhere. We have served, check it out, nearly 110,000 refugees during this time, many of whom are now American citizens and beloved members of our community, workplaces and neighborhoods, blah, blah, blah. And over the years, we have resettled individuals from Ukraine, Congo, Myanmar. We've supported vulnerable populations across the globe, regardless of their nationality. Now, since March, a dedicated team of Episcopal Migration Ministries has fulfilled our commitment to serve people who arrived just before or in the first days of the new administration. Now that we're ending our involvement, we have asked the administration towards a mutual agreement that will allow us to wind down our operations. I mean, maybe if they want to do that. Otherwise, just your funding's cut off. Have a nice life. We are working with the affected staff members to provide extensive outplacement services and severance packages. Now, I have said before that no change in political fortunes alters our commitment to stand with the world's most vulnerable people. And I want to reaffirm that. While our public-private partnership as a refugee resettlement agency is no longer viable, womp womp, we are hard at work to develop another plan. And look at this money. Oh my goodness. Now, they say we have vibrant ministries around the church, so we're going to serve migrants everywhere. And Episcopalians support newcomers through education, direct service, and advocacy. Our diocese also work to address the root causes of migration, which is just a euphemism for letting your country be invaded. Oh, we need to send more money to them so that they can invade you harder. We pledge to redouble our efforts. Good luck. Have fun. We will invest in our ministries that support forced migrants through countries and territories through our church. This includes Europe, where they serve more than 140,000 refugees there. Well, England's tired of this crap too. We'll see what the Englands do. The British, our friends in the UK, do about all this because their prime minister just today said, we're done with illegals too. We got to speak English if you want to come in here. You got to have a degree. You got to have some utility to our country. We're not going to be an island that has no purpose or meaning or reason for existence anymore. Good for them. Just what we're doing. So they're going to continue to support this all over the world, obviously, but check this out. It is important to understand the scale of federal grant money from which we are stepping away. Check this out. In most recent years, we got $50 million annually in federal funds. $50 million a year. This is not a loss that can be bridged with donor funds or proceeds. Yeah, we know. However, we will raise funds for new and expanded migration ministries across the church and for our partners in the ministry. We saw this, man. It's not just the Episcopalians, it's everybody. Okay, I'm Catholic. It's the Catholics too. Or maybe the organizations set up in their names, right? This looks like it's from the church, but a lot of these, like the Lutheran organization, Migration Services, right? There's so many of them that just set up these NGOs. They're like, we're a religious organization helping people in the name of Jesus. You're like, okay, we know what you're doing. You're invading our country and getting rich while you're doing it. And you made $50 million a year. And that's all cut off. In the coming weeks, Migration Ministries will share more news about how to be involved. In the meantime, please pray for vetted refugees who are not coming to our country. We pray that they find peace in their home countries. May our faith in the risen Christ, yeah, amen for all that, including the fact that you're now no longer getting $50 million. You're no longer going to be using our own money to invade our country with foreigners. And it seems like you are absolutely racist, like you're throwing a temper tantrum, right? They're acting like there's some sort of an attack on what they're doing. It's not. It's not attacking anything, okay? It's a reorganization of funds to be more aligned with American interests. You can still help a ton of migrants. There's a whole group of migrants right over here. You just mentioned too, the other Christians who are under attack. You can go help them, go help the South Africaners. Not a big deal. They would rather not do it, right? They'd rather just throw everything away. That's how much they hate white people. And I don't know if this applies to all Episcopalians. I mean, I know the Episcopalian Church, I think it has about 2 million people in the United States, I think from, last numbers. And I'm pretty sure they're extremely liberal just in general, right? Not to generalize an entire religion, but I will. But I think that they have LGBTQ pastors and all sorts of things. So it's a very, woke-ish religion. And you can see it is manifesting itself in this. Just go help some white people. We won't do it. We'd rather give up $50 million a year because we hate you if you're a South Africaner who needs some help because you're being executed and murdered in South Africa. Now, the White House obviously gave us the backdrop to this. In shocking disregard for its citizens' rights, the nation and the Republic of South Africa recently enacted a new act. It's called the Appropriation Act 13 of 2004. Enables the government, right? This is why these people are refugees. Now, they keep telling us that they're refugees or they're seeking asylum because their pupusa business is under attack or something like that. And we saw that with Kilmar. Like some gang was attacking him because he's in another gang and didn't want to admit any of that, but mom's pupusa business in El Salvador, they moved to Guatemala. Okay. And that's like a personal problem for you. Sorry you're going through that struggle. That doesn't give you license to get access to America. This is another government that is targeting a specific group of people. In this case, you can see the whites. This act follows countless government policies designed to dismantle equal opportunity and other things for disfavored landowners who are racially disfavored. Now, South Africa has taken aggressive positions toward the United States, and they're also not happy with Israel. And so we cannot support them while they're helping Iran and other things. So it is the policy of the United States, no aid or assistance to South Africa. We're going to support the resettlement of Afrikaner refugees who are coming to America, and we're going to do everything we can allowed by law. Under the Resettlement Act, get them here, bring them on board. And the order doesn't create any rights or benefits and all the other things that you see in the standard orders. But they were not happy about this. And what we see is we got a nice warm welcome of many people who have made their way in from the very violent country of South Africa into the United States as actual refugees targeted by the government.
The Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security and I just met with this first flight of South African refugees to arrive in our country pursuant to the President's executive order about certain egregious actions in South Africa. The President made it clear that Afrikaners in South Africa who were the victims of unjust racial discrimination would be welcome to come to the United States, and he's now delivering on that promise. The Deputy Secretary and I just spoke to some of the folks who arrived on this flight, and they tell quite harrowing stories of the violence that they faced in South Africa that was not redressed by the authorities, by the unjust application of the law. The United States, as we were proud to say, stands for equal justice under law and the fair and impartial application of the law. And again, this is a group that has not experienced that and has, to the contrary, experienced violence and really fear for their lives in South Africa. They were really subject to very serious, egregious, and targeted threats. We wish them well in their journey of the United States. We underscored for them that the American people are a welcoming and generous people, and we underscore the importance of assimilation into the United States, which is one of the very important factors that we look to in refugee admissions. And through this resettlement program for these folks who were vetted in South Africa, and we're sending a clear message that the United States really rejects the egregious persecution of people on the basis of race in South Africa, and we welcome these people to the United States and to a new future. Thank you very much.
All right, so big warm welcome for those people being attacked by their government there, and a lot of reaction to this. So Gunther Eagleman clipped this one. You can see Al Sharpton is saying, this is ridiculous. How could we take these white people from Africa? Trump must pay a price for this.
You have a lot of...
I've talked to some people that been at the protest, and he's still in custody wherever. But I think that the problem here is that you're talking about the mayor of a city where people are being held without due process in many cases.
Right.
So he has the right to say, wait a minute, I want to know what's going on here. Why are people being held without due process? Now, you contrast that at the same time, the New York Times is saying that President Trump is saying to white Afrikaners from South Africa, I'll give you refugee status. So we're bringing in white Afrikaners who we don't know if they're criminals criminals. We don't know this, what they went through in the legal process in South Africa. But people right here in Newark, we're going to assume they're all criminal. We're going to bring them out. And if the mayor wants to say, wait a minute, let's have due process, lock him up. He's trespassing. It is as blatantly a double standard as one can get. What is the real policy going to be? And I think he's right. Judges have to establish, are we going to have due process? Or are we just going to let everybody go? And can the president just give other people blanket, you're refugees? So what's the difference, Mr. President, between
They just did that for 4 years, Al.
refugee and a guy that may be a criminal and may not be, given the Garcia situation?
Incredible now. So the Democrats are all suddenly in favor of vetting people who are coming into our border. Just had to make it white people. It's like, oh, it's just white people coming. Like, nuh-uh. Where's their criminal record? We should vet them before they get in here. They're not asylums, right? It's wild. It is just racism is all it comes down to, as you can see. Now, we had some other clips here. Trump was asked about this, and he laced into the media for failing to talk about the genocide, the murder that's happening in South Africa, and why this policy was implemented in the first place.
I want to ask you about South African refugees. Dozens of Afrikaners who claim discrimination in their home country are heading to the United States, where your administration is going to welcome them as refugees. Now, this comes as you've halted virtually all refugee admissions for people fleeing famine and war from countries like Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why are you creating an expedited path into the country for Afrikaners but not others?
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed.
Pretty simple.
Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have a G20 meeting there or something. But we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of. But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about.
No, they don't.
But it's
white
a terrible
people,
thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me.
Yep.
But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. That would be the only story they'd talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible. I have people that live in South Africa. They say it's a terrible situation taking place. So we've essentially extended citizenship to those people and to escape from that violence and come here.
Now, you just heard the president say, I don't care about their race, their ethnicity, nothing, okay? They're being killed by their government. There's bad things that are happening down there. And so that's what the program is set up for. It's not set up for what Joe Biden did, which is to have our country invaded. Everybody just says, oh, asylum. What are you fearful of? Well, I actually had a bad burrito down there in Guatemala yesterday, and my stomach's a little bit rough. Like, wow, bad burritos. Come on into America. We got plenty of those here. So, the point is, we, according to the president, don't care about any of those other things. But what MSNBC will say is that, yes, you do. This is all about accepting white people because you're bigots over there. Here is what one woman said on MSNBC, and they spent all afternoon on this.
Trump administration, they're saying that essentially these white South Africans assimilate better, and they're also not at this much of a security risk. That's really causing a lot of people to be appalled, frankly.
Did he say that? Did you hear him say that at all?
And I also should tell people that this violence that they're talking about that are dealing with these Afrikaners, I've been hearing from people that say there is violence in South Africa, but it's affecting everybody of every single race, Katie.
Okay, so they just make stuff up, right? Trump didn't say anything about security or about integrating better or any of those things, which I think is fair to comment on, by the way, right? If they speak English and we speak English, that's good. If they understand capitalism and free markets and they understand basic concepts that are related to civic virtues and civic values like free speech and due process and private property rights and voting and all of those things, then yeah, that is an easier assimilation, much more so than somebody who doesn't speak English, somebody who doesn't have any measurable skills, somebody who can't integrate into society because they're going to have to, kind of hold themselves off and create their own little constituencies like Ilhan Omar has in little Somalia and all these other places. We don't want that at all. Why can't we say that in this country? Why can't we say, yeah, actually, you get priority if you speak English? Or yeah, we'll admit you if you can come in here and immediately stand up a business or provide a useful service or trade. How come we can't say that anymore? So what if we want to say that? We're allowed to say that. This is America. We have control of our borders. It's our country, and we're not obligated to take in a bunch of people who don't add any value to what we do here. So you can see they're going to continue this on. They went on for another 5 minutes here, and here is what Colin Rugg clipped for us. Colin Rugg has just been suffering through this for all of us, as MSNBC had a 5-minute struggle session on this. They say this is a sign of white supremacy here. The panel, I don't care what color they are. If they have all of those same skill sets, if they come in, they speak English, they've got good trades, they've got, something useful to bring to America, I don't care what color you are. But it's something we should be able to talk about because we don't want to import people who are a drain ultimately on society and more difficult to integrate. So they brought all these people and went so far as to suggest that the situation in South Africa is not even a big deal. It's only like a handful of white farmers who've been murdered. It's like, relax. It's like not even a big deal. Once it hits a few 100,000 people, then we can care.
Of the people who created the most diabolical system of white supremacy in human history, apartheid. They're not directly responsible for it, but it was a system that actually moved black people off of the arable land. So they inherited the land that black people had to give up. It was called forced removal.
So they're going to
something called a Bantustan policy, where they moved black people out of the cities and farmlands into these remote areas of the non-arable land. I mean, it was just one of the most worst processes ever. But what has happened in this strange, bizarre world we're living in is that the Afrikaners have become the darling of these right-wing white supremacist movements around the world. That it's like the lost cause for them. It's like the old Confederacy. They're held up as these white Christians who are being dispossessed of their land. It's like,
well, are they white? Are they Christian? And are they being dispossessed of their land? I think the answer to all three of those is yes.
This is a modern replacement theory in a country where, by the way, white people make up 7% of the population and own 78% of the farmland. So it's actually, there's no injustice here. As you mentioned, it's taking places away from refugees who are really being crushed by authoritarian governments. And
wild. So nothing bad is happening. So just shut up. It's just white people. They can get murdered. They can have their property and their homes and everything stolen from them. But we should just consider it what it is, according to this guy, which is racism and white supremacy from Trump. So here was another one on MSNBC. This woman, Donna Edwards, accuses Trump of being a racist. Here she is.
Well, in my view, what makes it different is that they are white South Africans.
Yeah, white.
The president, in my view, has not hidden his racism behind a bushel. In fact, in his policies, whether it's removing government workers or, in this case, admitting white South Africans while denying refugee status, asylum seekers from other countries, principally Central and South American and Black nations.
We got plenty of everybody else. You guys had 4 years to accept refugees from all over the world. We got tons of them here. And now we're, expanding the pot a little bit. We're diversifying, as you said. Diversity is the name. And so here is what it looked like there.
We are excited to welcome you here to our country where we think you will bloom, and we will hopefully allow you to have fulfilling lives for your children, and then we will bloom and we will benefit alongside you. So thank you very much for coming here.
Again, on behalf of President Trump, Secretary Noem, we're just so grateful that you guys are here.
Okay, so the Anglican Church just canceled all their federal contracts because like 60 white people, 57 of them showed up in America. And this is reprehensible, detestable. This is racism in action because we saved these people from theoretically being murdered in another country where the government is attacking them. The refugee program was set up for stuff like this, not set up to be an automatic checkbox. You just show up, claim asylum, claim refugee status, check a box, come into the country. Never what it was for. Nice to see it being put to actual use for the purpose of the program. And we welcome them to America. And we're going to watch MSNBC continue to melt down on this because their racism knows no bounds and it is now on full display.